Your Steve Jones Show podcast is loading now. The Steve Jones Show podcast is sponsored by Sunbury Motors, North 4th Street in Sunbury, and Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. Sports talk where your voice counts. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now, from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
And good afternoon, Wednesday edition of the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK and Sean Carey. Steve, in a second, will be checking in from the Sunbury Motors Studio. Sunbury Motors, Ford, Lincoln, Hyundai in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza in Sunbury. And Sunbury Motors Kia on the Strip, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. You can reach out to us by email. It's stevejones@wkok.com. We're also on social media. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter. Our Twitter handle at SteveJonesPSU. Website is stevejonesshow.com. 3 months of shows always archived there, but you can also have our shows sent straight to your mobile device, your smartphone or tablet, and you can do that when you subscribe to our Steve Jones Show podcast. You can do that on either Google Play, Apple Podcast app, or iTunes. We do have a traffic trouble spot to tell you about here as we're about 310 on WKOK. We received word of a pedestrian accident on the Strip, routes 11 and 15, Shamokin Dam. It is affecting traffic on routes 11 and 15 north, heading out of Hummel's Wharf towards Shamokin Dam, and that is near the Colonial Village Plaza. The left lane is blocked of routes 11 and 15 north in Shamokin Dam. So that could slow you down a little bit as you're heading out of Selinsgrove and moving up toward Shamokin Dam this hour. More details, too, on our WKOK Facebook. And for breaking news and information like that, you can also follow WKOK on Twitter at WKOK1070. Crazy night last night in Major League Baseball. No-hitter for the Seattle Mariners. That'll be our play-by-play call the day later. And also, how about the pitcher for the Baltimore Orioles, Dylan Bundy? Became the first pitcher in Major League Baseball history to allow not one, not two, not three, but 4 home runs without getting an out. Stuck in the first inning. And the eventual final score was 15-7. Kansas City over Baltimore. Baltimore struggling big time. A lot of their fans looking for changes in B-more. Whether that happens, we'll have to wait and see. Lots of daytime baseball today. Miami and the Chicago Cubs. Chris Bryant has gone deep. His 100th career home run, fastest in Cubs history to do that. So you have that game going on this afternoon. As we check some scores here for you. Actually, 7 games happening this afternoon. And as we get those updated scores for you, we can tell you we'll have the Phillies tonight here on WKOK. Phillies and the Giants. Terrific night last night for Aaron Nola. Fanned a career-high 12. Very dominant outing in the Phillies' 4-2 win at Citizens Bank Park. And some home runs, too, by Aaron Altier, Alfaro, and Carlos Santana, all hitting solo shots last night for the Fightins. So tonight will be game 2 of that 3-game set. San Francisco and the Phillies. Nick Pivetta for the Phillies, 1-2. Pivetta hoping to get back on track. 1-2 with a 4.76 ERA going up against right-hander Chris Stratton tonight for San Francisco. He is 27. Last outing against the Braves, pitched 6 strong innings, allowing 3 runs on 6 hits, 6 strikeouts, and 2 walks. And airtime tonight for that here on WKOK will be 6:30 with On Deck and first pitch at 7:05. be a Phillies day game tomorrow, so that will preempt us here on WKOK, and then we'll come back on Friday for a fresh show. We'll talk pucks on Friday. Greg Wyshynski, senior NHL writer for ESPN and also host of the Puck Soup podcast, will join us on Friday as we count down to the Eastern Conference final between Washington and Tampa Bay. Nashville, Winnipeg, they're back out on the ice tomorrow night. 76ers back out on the court this evening. 76ers in Boston looking to trim that series to a 3-2 lead. And that'll be an 8 o'clock tip tonight. And we'll talk 76ers basketball with Mark Narducci of the Philadelphia Inquirer coming up on today's show. So as we mentioned, a lot of daytime baseball today. Just wrapping up, the Reds over the Mets in 10, 2-1. Cleveland shutting out Milwaukee 5-0. They're now at the 7th inning stretch. And as we mentioned a moment ago, the Cubs up 1-0 over Miami. Chris Bryant with his 100th career home run, fastest in Cubs history to do that. And that's a 1-0 game in the bottom half of the third inning. Houston and Oakland is set to start later this hour. Boston and the Yankees, they will continue their rivalry tonight at 7. And also a late-night matchup between Arizona and the Dodgers. So again, we will have Giants and Phillies here on WKOK tonight. Pre-game 6:30, and tip will be at a first pitch at 7:05. So you didn't think we'd get through a day without some pro football news, huh? The quarterback situation in Seattle. Russell Wilson's contract situation going largely unnoticed. Will he be franchise tagged? That's the burning question in the Pacific Northwest. So future pretty much in doubt as to how things could play out. And information from Mike Florio from NBC Sports and ProFootballTalk.com.
Yeah.
Per a source with knowledge of the situation, the current expectation from Russell Wilson's perspective, he'll finish his current deal, receive a franchise tag in 2020, but that could cost Seattle to keep him there for another season after his current deal expires of $30.3 million.
Does Rihanna know?
Sierra.
Or Sierra?
Sierra.
Yeah.
Sierra. Rihanna, Sierra.
Wait.
They're both singers.
They're
both singers.
I know I'm not.
They're both singers whose songs we've played on 94KX for years. So
I know they would tell you right away they know I'm not. No, I may be able to sing a different ballad in words, but
yeah,
you know.
Sierra's claim to fame is 1-2 step. You think of a Sierra song, that's the one 1-2 step. That was quite a while ago. That was close to 10 years ago. That was quite a while.
If you insist.
Yep.
If you insist. Look, WKOK has been all news now for over 20 years. News and information for 20 years. Okay? Hey, you're talking a foreign language to these people.
Well, chances are they were listening to 94KX 10 or so years ago, and now they've matured and now found a new radio station right the other side of the glass from 94KX.
Sure, if you insist.
Yeah.
Great. Let's get to the crux of issues here. Let's start with this. Sandy Barber last night, the opening stop on the Caravan was in New York. And it comes up every year, and Pitt has done a great job of keeping the issue alive because Heather Lyka said, well, we've had conversations. She keeps saying over and over, they've had conversations. There has never been any result of those conversations revealed. And Sandy Barber said last night that realistically, based on how the Big Ten schedules, and again, the Big Ten has 9 conference games, while the ACC has 8 conference games. The Big Ten does not allow the flexibility for this series to realistically continue on a year-in and year-out basis. She said the earliest that she can see Pitt being on the schedule, and it's not a guarantee it would even be then, but the earliest would be 2030. There's 2 more games with Pitt this year at Heinz Field and next year at Beaver Stadium. Originally, it was a 2-game series. And I think everyone knows how I felt about this the entire time. Look, I'm looking at a program in Penn State that is playing for national championships. Okay, they're playing to get into the college football playoff. Now, there are many different avenues of doing it. Probably going undefeated in conference play and going undefeated against almost any kind of conference, non-conference group would do it. A 12-0 Big Ten team, 13-0 Big Ten team, including the Big Ten championship game, would do it. All right? So I understand that. I think that would be a realistic statement. Okay. So now, in a conference that is stacked, especially a division that is stacked, Penn State is obviously in the same division with Ohio State, Michigan. Michigan State's been able to get better. And it sounds like Maryland has recruited very well. That's all in one division. Those are teams you're going to be playing every single year. And you know Indiana can have its moments, and then we'll see what Rutgers is going to do. But Maryland's recruited better, no question. Michigan is still Michigan. Defensively, they're going to be really good again this year. And Michigan State, after a tumble, brought itself back up last year, where they're a really good team again. Not great, but they're a really good team. Okay, so what do you want to do with your non-conference? I've said this once, and I've said it 100 times. I'll say it again. I do not want Penn State to be in Iowa's situation. You're like, well, Iowa, why Iowa? Iowa is forced to play Iowa State every year. They have no non-conference flexibility. They are stuck, okay, stuck playing Iowa State every year, which means they can't, for example, do a home and away with UCLA, can't do a home and away with Auburn, can't do a home and away with Texas A&M. Can't do it. Cannot do it. Years ago, I was speaking in Newcastle. I want to say it was 2015, I think it was. It was whatever year Army was on the schedule. I think that was 2015, right?
You are correct. Yep, October 15. Yep.
So it was in May of 2015, or late April, early May of 2015. I went to Newcastle because I remember I listened to the NFL draft on the way back. In fact, I listened to Johnny Manziel get picked on radio, on Sirius. And when I was there, I'm going to get pick questions more there. Okay, I'm going to get more pick questions anywhere west of Altoona. I'm going to get pick questions. East of Altoona, I don't. I really don't get them that often. More, people are like, more the further east you go, the more they want to see Notre Dame on the schedule. I'm just telling you based on feedback I get. Okay, and I'm out at more of these things than anybody else here, so I get more face-to-face feedback on stuff like that. And they were saying, well, geez, we're going to play Army. Why, we should be playing Pitt. And there's an economic formula here that has worked forever. And the economic formula that has worked here forever is that you need the TV money, you need the gate money, you need donations in the Nittany Lion Club and so forth, but you also need, as part of the economic formula here, 7 home games in order to keep all the sports. And I don't want to be dropping sports. I would not like to see that happen. dropping sports. And if you play Pitt every year on the schedule, because of the 9 home games, you're going to have some years with 6 home games and some years with 7. And you can't go away from it, because they're already scheduled in that slot with home and aways with Virginia Tech, West Virginia, and, of course, the Auburn one in 21 and 22. What excites you more, the idea of seeing Pitt come into the Beaver Stadium or seeing Auburn come in? Now, 6 years from now, actually it's less than that, 3 years from now, when Auburn comes in, or 4 seasons from now, when Auburn comes in, they may be the Auburn everyone expects on this particular day. Or maybe something's happened and they're mediocre. I don't know. Nobody knows when you schedule that far ahead. Pitt 4 years from now could be powerful. Or they could continue on the path of mediocrity they've had in recent years. You don't know 4 seasons from now it's going to play out, but on paper, I'd rather see Auburn in that slot, because the other 2 slots have to be games with guarantees where then Penn State keeps the gate, keeps the parking, keeps concessions, the whole thing, the whole 9 yards. They get everything, which is critical to making sure that they keep everything above water here. Now, if Penn State had 8 conference games and not 9, I would be far more reticent about the pitch situation. All right, maybe play them 4 times in 10 years, maybe 6 times in 10 years, something like that, because you'd have more flexibility in the schedule to play around with it. But now the Big Ten, along with the Big 12 and the Pac-12, have 9 home games. You can't, or 9 conference games. You don't have that flexibility. It doesn't exist. Years ago, I'm going to bring up something that a lot of people have forgotten about, but I'll bring it up right now because I remember such things. The Big Ten and the Pac-12 are going to do a football-basketball joint venture, with the idea of maybe playing a triple header at the Staples Center, playing a triple header at the United Center, because each conference had 12 teams at that point, and they could do it. And then it would be on the opening weekend of the season or the second weekend, one of the two, it'd be a Big Ten versus Pac-12 matchup. Well, the Pac-12 was the one that pulled out of it. And the reason they pulled out of it was that USC and Stanford both said, look, we don't have the scheduling flexibility to do this because we're locked into long-term contracts with Notre Dame. It's the same concept. It is the same concept. I don't want Penn State to be Iowa, where Iowa is stuck every year playing Iowa State. And then what happens at the end of the season? Everyone says, well, we can't really consider Iowa for this spot. Why? Because they don't play anybody. I'm looking at a big picture. I don't care about backyard, anything. That doesn't mean anything to me anymore. Okay, that ship sailed. And remember, it is very convenient for everybody without a memory. Okay, which includes a lot of people that, they have no semblance of history. Okay, Pitt's in this position because Pitt put itself in this position. Pitt looked at Joe Paterno back in 1981. I did the interview with him in his office in Rec Hall about the All Sports Conference. It was long. It was a 45-minute interview about what he wanted to do with it, the goals he had for it, so forth, the schools he wanted to invite, the meetings that were going on. And then he kept me up to date because I took the time to do it. So Joe kept me up to date the entire time. And then the decision was made, Syracuse, Boston College, okay, Pitt wasn't going to do this. they got into the Big East for basketball, which for a long period of time worked out great for Pitt. But they elected not to do this. Okay. And then they're still picking their collective jaws off the floor that Penn State joined the Big Ten. What? You're going to do what? You're doing what? Because they had their cake and they were eating it too with Big East basketball, which was great. And everybody was still independent in football. So they could still play Penn State in football. Never have to worry about playing them in basketball ever. And that was it. And then Penn State joined the Big Ten, and suddenly they didn't have things their own way. And they have labeled Penn State as the bad guy ever since. It's been a very successful bad guy campaign, when the bottom line is their administration in the 1980s had absolutely no foresight whatsoever. Joe was on the television committee with the College Football Association. He had a feeling as to where the Oklahoma-Georgia thing was going. When that broke through, the Supreme Court ruled in their favor, boom, television exploded, money for football exploded. It was all over the place. He knew it was going to happen, and he had a plan in place for the entire East to take advantage of it, and Pitt didn't take advantage of it. Now here we are sitting here in 2018. Oh, they won't play. Blah. It's just, you know what? Blame your own people. They made the mistake. And nobody ever talks about that mistake. And frankly, that bothers me that nobody talks about that mistake. But maybe because I'm one of the few people around when it happened. We'll come back with more in a moment here on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
103 years in business is spectacular for you. Here's why. During the month of May, Sunbury Motors Ford is going to sell 103 new Fords by discounting every new Ford to the lowest price possible. Plus, give you more for your trade. SMC is where you want to be if you want to choose from 59 new 2018 Escapes starting at $19,975. SMC is where you want to be if you want to choose from new 2018 F-150s starting at $26,669. Sunbury Motors has 110 new Ford trucks to choose from. See why the F-150 has been America's best-selling truck for 41 consecutive years. One is sold every 43 seconds. SMC is where you want to be if you want 0% financing for up to 72 months and no payments for 90 days available on select models. Now is the time to take advantage of Sunbury Motors' goal to sell 103 new Fords in May. SMC's goal is your gain. Sunbury Motors in the North 4th Street Auto Plaza, Sunbury. Selling more cars and satisfying more customers for 103 years.
Taking your calls at 800-795-9565. This is the Steve Jones Show on News Radio 1070 WKOK. Now from the Sunbury Motors Studio, here's Steve Jones.
Sunbury Motors, 4th Street in Sunbury. Sunbury Motors Kia, routes 11 and 15 in Hummel's Wharf. The Reds this afternoon beat the Mets 2-1 in 10 innings. But that's not the big story of the game. The Mets in the first inning batted out of order. Mets had a rally going in the first inning, and there was a discrepancy in lineup cards. After Wilmer Flores struck out for the second out of the first inning as Dribble Cabrera reached on a ground rule double that bounced into the stands in left field. When that happened, Reds interim manager, Jim Riggleman, and I know Jim because Jim was a roving instructor in the Cardinals organization. And over time, over a season, you strike up friendships with people. He'd come on the air with me and the whole thing. I like Jim. He went to the plate to Gabe Morales with his lineup card. After a brief exchange, Morales then ruled that Jay Bruce, the next batter in the Mets lineup, was automatically out to end the inning. Cabrera was still credited with a double in the scorebook. Bruce officially was ruled as a 2 unassisted. In the lineup card that was posted publicly, Flores was batting second with Cabrera batting third. But the original lineup card that was presented to Riggleman at home plate had Cabrera batting second with Flores batting third. It is the first time in nearly 2 years that a team is batted out of order. The Brewers were the last ones to do it back on the 4th of July in 2016 against the Nationals. They batted out of order. Also today, the Indians lead the Brewers 6-1 top of the ninth inning, but the Brewers have hit in order all day. And the Cubs lead the Marlins 9-1 in the bottom of the fourth. Astros and Oakland just underway on the coast. Red Sox and Yankees tonight. Phillies play the Giants tonight, looking for the third game of this series. They play tomorrow. We'll have no show tomorrow. The Pirates are, I think, in a rain delay, I think the Pirates in a rain delay in Chicago. I remember seeing that. Let's see. Are they underway? Let's see. Tigers in Texas 3-3 in the fifth. No, White Sox lead 4-0 over the Pirates in the top of the sixth inning. Angels lead Colorado 1-0 bottom of the second. Tonight it is the Sixers and the Celtics game number 5. All right, Rick in New Columbia on Notre Dame football. Hello, Rick. Great to hear you.
Oh, nice to talk to you, Steve. I have a question for you. It seems to me there's one slot open in the Big Ten yet, and I think the perfect school for that would be Notre Dame. What do you think Notre Dame's ever going to join the Big Ten? I think the Notre Dame fans around here should be thrilled for it because they could actually go see a game then.
I have always been so in favor of Notre Dame coming in. And Jim Delaney, let's give Jim Delaney credit. In 1999, Rick, he laid it all out there. I mean, he went to the wall to try and get Notre Dame in as the 12th team in 1999. The faculty senate at Notre Dame loved it. They voted yes. But the Board of Trustees in the end voted no because they wanted to keep their independence in football. Notre Dame is now in a spot in the ACC where they're there for basketball and virtually almost all of their other sports. Hockey, of course, they're in the Big Ten. And they are obligated to play 5 ACC opponents a year in football. That's the arrangement they have, but that's their price for wanting to keep independence. And for Notre Dame, in so many ways, it would be incredibly lucrative for them to be in the Big Ten based on the TV contracts. It would also give the Big Ten even more clout when they go to the table to negotiate their contracts. And then for Notre Dame's non-revenue producing sports, which is almost all of them, except for football and men's basketball, they'd be busing to Illinois, busing to Indiana, busing to Purdue, busing to Michigan State, busing to Michigan, busing to Northwestern. They would save so much money, Rick. It's ridiculous how much they would save if they joined the Big Ten. But they want to keep their football independence, and they're very staunch in that position.
Well, I can only speak for me, but I'm a sports fan. But if Notre Dame would join the Big Ten, I would really probably buy season tickets for basketball, too. If I could be guaranteed to see Notre Dame every year, that would put me over the top right there. And I'm a Penn State fan, don't get me wrong. I just say Notre Dame fans around here should say yes, join, because they could go to Rutgers and see Notre Dame. They could go Maryland, and I doubt if they'd get a seat in Penn State. But those two, and then if they really want to take a ride, they could go to Indiana and see them anytime they want. But I'll tell you what, it just seems like a perfect fit to me. I think they're getting their experience in hockey, saying, yes, we're making money in hockey. I think we should do this.
Rick, I think you make all really good points. There isn't a single item that you put down there that I would even try to argue with. I'm on the same page as you. I have been very, very big on Notre Dame joining the Big Ten ever since Penn State got in. So you're going back 25 years, I felt Notre Dame was a perfect fit. And it's Notre Dame that has said no. And I want to say this about Jim Delaney, who went to the wall to do this. Jim Delaney was not going to pull things off the table and say, well, we'll let you come in for this and this and this, and you can stay independent in football, like the Big East did, like the ACC has done, where they give away bowl games and things like that. Jim Delaney said, look, you're either all in or all out, and we'd love to have you be all in. Notre Dame took it seriously. They went through everything, but in the end, 19 years ago, they said no. I'd love to see them revisit it and try and go give it another crack.
Oh, I'm a faithful listener, and quite truthfully, it might have been a year back, but you put out the money numbers of the way the contract is, and you figured it out that they'd be making more money in the Big Ten than they would be independent right now.
Now, I remember that day.
I'll hang up and let you go.
You're better than the suit doesn't even know I ever talked about it. So, Rick, I love you.
Yeah. Okay, well, I'm going to hang up and I'll listen on then. Thanks.
Rick,
Bye.
You're great. Thanks so much for being a faithful listener and calling. I enjoy hearing from you anytime.
All right, thank you. Bye.
That's Rick in New Columbia.
Hey, Steve, how many more years is Notre Dame committed to play at least 5 ACC opponents in football?
Through 2036.
Wow.
I believe.
Wow.
They've got the schedule, the ACC schedule, done for Notre Dame commitments through 2036. Let me just look that up just to make sure. A football schedule. Let's see, ACC. A football ACC. Let's see. Try and keep it simple here if we can. I thought it was 2036. I am right. Notre Dame ACC football games scheduled through 2036. Story on Fox. And what they did was they put a schedule together for through 2037. My apologies, I was wrong. It's one extra year. Notre Dame in 2026 plays North Carolina, Virginia, Louisville, Florida State, Syracuse. That's in 26. And in 2037, they play at Clemson, home with North Carolina State, at Syracuse, home with Miami, and at Wake Forest. That's how far ahead they are in the ACC.
That's mind-boggling. Wow. I would have never thought it'd been that long. I would have thought maybe 5 years down the road, like maybe 2022 or 23.
Nope. In fact, I brought it up the day they did it, because then I started talking about would Notre Dame just fully go into the ACC. It's an interesting situation there. Notre Dame is really good in a lot of sports. Have always been good for a long time in baseball. They just came off a great men's ice hockey season. Mike Bray is, you know how highly I think of Mike. Mike is a straight shooter who the mere idea, if Notre Dame was ever caught in anything basketball-wise that was impermissible, I can almost guarantee you with Mike it would be a complete accident or an oversight of something. All right? And they play in a 9,000-seat arena, perfect size, especially moving forward, it's a perfect size. But, yeah, they have it on here. Let's see. They play between 2026 and 2037. They will play Florida State 5 times, 3 at Notre Dame Stadium. They'll play Miami 5 times, 3 at Notre Dame Stadium. They will play Clemson 5 times, 3 of them in South Carolina. And they'll play Louisville 3 times, 3 of them in Kentucky. I mean, that's how far ahead they are, 2037 on the ACC games. It's 19 years.
I wonder behind closed doors how many people at NBC Sports would disagree with that, just with,
20. That's 20 seasons.
Wow.
Well, NBC's not a part of the Big Ten contract. Okay, so the Big Ten, that is something you'd have to work out. I mean, what happens now is that when Notre Dame plays a road game against an ACC team or any team, it is under the guise of whatever contract package that team has. And whenever these ACC games are played at Notre Dame, it's on NBC. It should be pointed out that when you do play Notre Dame on NBC, you do get half the money of the game. It isn't as Notre Dame gets all the money. The team they're playing gets the same number. Now, if it's an ACC game, that means they have to share it. Now, how the revenue sharing works in the ACC is probably an interesting formula now at Notre Dame's. And it's not as straightforward as the SEC and the Big Ten.
No, I guess you can take the side of the ACC schools. Oh, yeah, well, this is a chance where we can play Notre Dame on the road, and wow, we're locked into an NBC game. Who'd have thought if they wouldn't have had that contract, we wouldn't be getting that kind of money.
This is the play by the ACC long term to say, let's do this with the idea that at some point they can convince Notre Dame to be a full-fledged member. That's what it comes down to. This is a roll of the dice on their part. And it's not a heavy roll of the dice either. I mean, it's not a heavy roll of the dice. I mean, for all these schools, like Rick just said, I think Rick put it well. Rick loves Penn State, but he loves Notre Dame too, which is fine. A lot of people feel that way. All right, well, let's face it. Let's take 2026. You don't think the people in Chapel Hill aren't going to be revved up to have Notre Dame coming in? You don't think that down at Doak Campbell Stadium down in at Florida State in 2026, they're not going to be revved up to have Notre Dame come in? I mean, Wake Forest doesn't have a big stadium, neither does Duke. They're both in the 30,000s. That's the size of their stadiums. Wake Forest and Duke both have like 32 to 36,000 seat stadiums. They'll be wedged in 2027. Then they're going to go down to Clemson, and Clemson's got 80,000 seats. I mean, 2028, Pitt will sell out a game. They've got Notre Dame. When do they go to Pitt again? 28, and when's the other time? This is the second time to go to Pitt. In 2034.
Well, you take the younger Penn State fan, for instance, that was in there in 2007 for the Penn State-Notre Dame game on a sultry September night. I mean, everyone's packed in that night. There's no place else a Penn State fan would want to be than there that night for that game.
Right. I mean, look, remember I was talking last week about brands, and I was talking about the NCAA Wrestling Championships, and now the Penn State-Notre Dame NIT game, even though it was a noon game, actually had more viewers. Okay? Same day, had more viewers. Well, it wasn't, part of it, there are a lot of Penn State fans out there, but the brand of Notre Dame sitting there, of Notre Dame basketball, really helped drive it in conjunction with the fact that Penn State has a lot of people love watching Penn State. And, I've talked brands mean a lot. And the Notre Dame brand is a heavyweight brand. And that's a good example that on that particular Saturday, on March 17th, Penn State won the NCAA Wrestling Championship in prime time. And the Penn State-Notre Dame basketball game, remember, Penn State-Notre Dame basketball game had more viewers. I saw the numbers, so I know what the numbers are. All right, we'll come back with more in a moment. Brought to you by Sunbury Motors on News Radio 1070 WKOK.
Your station for news, weather, business, and CBS Sports Radio. News Radio 1070 WKOK Sunbury and on WKOK.com.